Jack Whitmore hadn't always been a loner. 10 years ago, you might have found him designing clean water systems for remote towns in Guatemala or debating fluid dynamics over whiskey with former college classmates. But the years had dulled his taste for people and sharpened his love for silence. That's why the cabin mattered. It wasn't just wood and stone to him. It was his last clean line, tucked deep in the Appalachian foothills, just outside a development called Eagle's Crest. The cabin sat on land inherited from his uncle, along with a legal curiosity, a 40-foot wide parcel that included a rickety, steel-reinforced bridge spanning a gorge, the only way in or out of Eagle's Crest. Jack always thought of it as the forgotten bridge. Maintenance had been handed off to him with the deed, but no one in Eagle's Crest really noticed. For years, the HOA had assumed the county owned it. And Jack, he just wanted to be left alone. Then Karen showed up. She arrived the way hurricanes do, with bold fonts, clipped language, and an ego that turned every interaction into a performance. Karen Madsen, newly elected president of the HOA, made it her mission to clean up the wild elements on the fringe of their pristine neighborhood. Jack was that wild element. It started small. A warning letter on weatherproof paper, shoved into his mailbox at the foot of the bridge. You are in violation of Article 9.2 of the HOA Code. Non-conforming structures outside approved design guidelines. Please submit remodeling plans within 30 days. Jack chuckled when he read it. His cabin had been built in the 1950s. No one had so much as looked at it since Reagan was in office. He tossed the letter into the fire pit and figured that was that. It wasn't. Next came a gate. A metal gate welded directly across the bridge, put up overnight by HOA contractors. Jack found it on a chilly Tuesday morning when he tried to return after a supply run. He parked his truck, climbed out, and stared at the freshly installed blockade. Two bright orange signs flanked it. Private HOA access only, and trespassers will be reported. He laughed at first. Actually laughed. Then the laughter fell into silence. Karen was waiting. She stood beside her BMW on the other side of the bridge, arms crossed, lips pursed like she was sucking a lemon. A tall man in a neon vest stood behind her, probably a hired security guard. Mr. Whitmore, she called out, this area is HOA controlled. You're in violation of several community standards, and until we receive your architectural compliance forms, access is restricted. Jack tilted his head. You welded a gate onto my bridge. Karen scoffed. The bridge is part of our ingress infrastructure. We've assumed maintenance responsibility for over a decade. Your cabin, however, remains He cut her off. On the bridge. Her face flickered. Just a twitch. Enough to show she hadn't expected that. I'm sorry, she asked. Jack walked forward until he stood 3 feet from the gate. The bridge. This bridge. It's on my deed. My uncle left it to me along with the cabin. Check the property records. Section 11B, 40 feet wide. Goes right across this ravine. Karen's confident smile began to buckle. That can't be correct, she said, but her voice had thinned. Oh, it's correct, Jack said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a manila envelope and held it up like a courtroom exhibit. I've got the survey, the plat maps, and even the maintenance contract the county tried to sneak past us in '97. You built your gate on my land. Karen didn't respond immediately. Her eyes darted toward the man in the vest, who suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Jack leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take this gate down today. You're going to issue a written apology, and you're going to stay the hell off my bridge. If you don't, and I mean this sincerely, I'll file an injunction by Friday and have the entire HOA access shut down until a judge sorts it out. You wouldn't dare. Jack smiled, but it wasn't warm. Karen, I didn't spend the last 10 years keeping people out just to let someone like you start calling the shots. She didn't say anything. She just turned, barked something at the contractor, and stormed off. The gate stayed up for 3 more days. On the 4th morning, Jack returned with bolt cutters. He'd given the HOA a full 72 hours, generous, considering the trespass. But the gate remained. No apology. No retracción. Just more silence. So he parked his truck, walked up to the bridge in broad daylight, and clipped the padlock. It took 2 seconds. The gate swung open like a defeated soldier. He didn't look over his shoulder. Just tossed the lock into the ravine and drove across. Later that evening, the police came. 2 deputies. Young guys. Apologetic, but firm. We got a call from the Eagles Crest HOA. One of them said, alleges property destruction and trespassing. Jack handed them his documents. Deed, plat map, tax records, all neatly highlighted. The older of the 2 deputies whistled. Huh, you weren't kidding. No, mind if we take photos? Be my guest. They walked the bridge, took pictures, and jotted notes. One even muttered, can't believe they didn't check the records first. Before they left, the younger deputy asked, so what's the plan now? Jack looked at the horizon, where the HOA homes shimmered in late sunlight. I'll give them a week, he said. Then I make things uncomfortable. Karen didn't take the hint. Instead of backing off, she escalated. Flyers were distributed in mailboxes. Unauthorized individual occupying property adjacent to Eagles Crest, safety and zoning violations in progress. An emergency HOA meeting was called. Jack wasn't invited, but someone leaked a recording to him. A young resident named Bree, who worked at the local title office and had taken an interest in the whole mess. Karen, on the tape, was furious. We cannot allow someone to hold this community hostage with a technicality. I've been in contact with county supervisors. If he thinks he can manipulate us with outdated paperwork, he's wrong. But he owns the bridge, someone murmured. No, he claims to. But if we establish de facto control, regular maintenance, traffic signage, the county may view it as community infrastructure. We just have to be smart. Jack replayed that line 3 times. Established de facto control. They were trying to take the bridge by usage rights. It wasn't just Karen's vanity anymore. It was a land grab. Jack filed the injunction on a Tuesday. Within 24 hours, the county clerk's office served the HOA with a cease and desist on all construction, signage, and access control across Parcel 11B, the bridge. Karen called it sabotage. Jack called it leverage. He made his next move the same day. Installed 2 retractable bollards at each end of the bridge. Remote controlled. He even wired a solar panel to power them. When Bree asked if that was legal, Jack grinned and said, it's private property. And it's for safety, of course. Then came the closure. A week later, Jack lowered the bollards and parked his truck directly across the bridge's entrance. A laminated sign hung from his tailgate. Bridge closed for private maintenance. Please use alternate route. Of course, there was no alternate route. The only other access road had collapsed in a mudslide back in 2003. The HOA had ignored requests to fund a rebuild. For the first time in 2 decades, Eagles Crest was landlocked. It took about 5 hours before Karen came marching down the hill, heels crunching gravel, rage dripping off her like sweat. You made your point, she said, out of breath. Now open the bridge. Jack sipped coffee from a camping mug. I haven't made any point yet. Just conducting a little private maintenance. Shouldn't take more than a week. There are families here. There's law here, he shot back. And you broke it first. Karen's face twisted. This is extortion. Jack stood slowly, stepped close. You welded a gate on my property. Posted trespass signs. Slandered me to the neighborhood. You threatened legal action without due process. And now you're mad. I'm using the exact kind of power you try to steal. She opened her mouth. Closed it again. Then, we'll see you in court. Jack smiled, tipping his mug. Looking forward to it. Back in town, the story caught fire. Bree had anonymously posted photos of the blockade and a copy of the plat map on a local Facebook group. Mountain Folk Against HOA Tyranny. Within 2 days, it had over 1,000 members. Even a county newspaper ran a headline. Bridge to nowhere. HOA trapped after property dispute. Jack became something of a local legend. People started calling him Bridge Jack. A few drove out just to watch from afar as HOA residents tried to organize carpools, grocery drops, and even drone deliveries. Karen doubled down, accusing Jack of endangering public safety, even suggesting to reporters that he was unstable. But no one bought it. By the end of the second week, cracks appeared within the HOA itself. Residents were furious. Meetings grew heated. Petitions started circulating. And Karen's own vice president, a dentist named Ken Luce, stepped forward with a statement. We were misled about the legality of our actions. The board takes full responsibility and is working toward a resolution. Karen didn't attend the next meeting. By the time the court date arrived, Jack had become a local folk hero. His story wasn't just legal drama anymore. It had become a referendum on power, property rights, and the often abusive reach of HOAs. Jack had done interviews with 2 regional papers and a local podcast called Outlaws of Appalachia. He didn't say much in them. He didn't have to. The image said enough. A man standing alone against a gate he never asked for, with the law in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. Karen, by contrast, was unraveling. She'd lost the support of her board. Her attempts to rally public opinion had backfired spectacularly. Even her husband had reportedly left their house to stay at a hotel after the bridge blockade had caused his business meeting to be canceled. His clients couldn't reach him. Court was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Jack wore a clean flannel, boots, and an old barber jacket. Marie came with him, offering moral support and a quiet smile. Karen, predictably, showed up with a lawyer. A man in a navy suit who looked like he billed by the minute and hadn't touched dirt in 20 years. The case itself was simple. Jack's attorney, a former land use specialist named Maurice Chong, presented clear evidence. The parcel deed, maintenance history, tax assessments, county records, and the HOA's own admission of unauthorized gate construction. Karen's team tried to argue that the HOA had established prescriptive rights by maintaining the bridge for over a decade. But Jack had receipts, literally. He'd kept every invoice for materials he'd bought over the years to maintain the bridge himself. Bolts, paint, concrete sealant. They showed photos of him patching the beams in 2018. Videos of him shoveling snow off the decking in 2021. Even a drone image showing a no trespassing sign he'd posted at the bridge's western end, still visible in Google Maps. It was over before lunch. The judge ruled in Jack's favor on all counts. The bridge, known as Parcel 11B, is the private property of Mr. Whitmore, as confirmed by county records and consistent use. The Eagles Crest HOA is ordered to pay for damages, issue a public apology, and permanently cease any claim to control or regulate said bridge or the adjoining land. Then came the kicker. Jack's lawyer leaned in for one final note. Your Honor, we'd like to file for a temporary easement suspension, essentially to allow Mr. Whitmore time to repair the damage done by unauthorized construction before permitting public access again. The judge raised an eyebrow. How long? Jack shrugged. 2 weeks. Granted. Karen went pale. Back at the cabin that afternoon, Jack didn't celebrate. He just sat on the porch with Bree, watching the shadows lengthen through the trees. Feels anticlimactic, she said. Jack sipped from a fresh mug of coffee. Justice is quiet. The noise comes before. She nodded. So what now? He smiled. Now I decide what to do with a bridge nobody appreciated until I shut it. The apology came the next week. Typed on HOA letterhead, signed by every board member except Karen. Posted on bulletin boards, mailed to residents, even shared on the HOA's website. We regret the actions taken that violated the property rights of Mr. Jack Whitmore. We extend our sincere apologies and pledge to act with greater transparency and legal diligence going forward. Karen resigned the same day. Word had it she moved to Florida. Something about starting fresh. Jack didn't care. She could run her next crusade in Boca Raton. Then came the offer. A man in a gray suit knocked on Jack's door. Said he represented a group of investors, developers who were interested in building a new trail system through the foothills. They'd pay generously to buy access through the bridge. Real money. Jack declined. Then the county came, wanted to discuss public easements. They hinted at eminent domain if things got difficult. Jack didn't say no. He said, "We'll talk." He wasn't trying to punish anyone, but he'd learned something in the battle with Karen. Sometimes you have to defend the lines no one sees until they try to cross them. Later that fall, Jack made a decision. He built a second gate. Beautiful wrought iron, with timber posts and hand-welded letters across the arch. Whitmore Bridge, by permission only. Below it, a small sign. Residents of Eagle's Crest may pass freely. Guests must request access in writing. It wasn't about ego. It was about memory. Boundaries. A quiet warning to the next person who thought rules didn't apply to them. Bree visited often after that. Sometimes just to talk. Sometimes to bring mail from town. Occasionally with questions about surveying and land law, she'd started taking courses. Jack didn't ask why. He just made coffee and listened. One night, months later, a light snow was falling. Bree stood on the bridge, looking down at the ravine, the black ribbon of stream winding through the trees. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Going to war over something like this?" Jack joined her at the railing, looked out at the trees, the stars above. "Not once," he said. "There's freedom in owning something small, so long as you're willing to fight to keep it." They stood there in silence. The wind whispered across the bridge. No gates, no guards, no Karen, just the clean, unbroken hum of peace reclaimed. Spring came late that year. The snow lingered on the ridges, and Jack spent the first warm weekend walking the length of the bridge, checking every joint, every bolt, every square foot of decking. Maintenance had become a ritual, not just to keep the bridge sound, but to remind himself that things held value when you took care of them. Down the hill, the HOA was quiet these days. A new president had been elected, a retired librarian named Mrs. Tanaka, who believed more in newsletters and bake sales than declarations and bylaws. She sent Jack a peach pie every other month and never asked for anything in return. It suited him just fine. The bollards had been removed. In their place, Jack installed a pair of discreet cameras, not for intimidation, but for insurance. Just in case someone got clever again. He kept the gates open day and night. The sign still hung at the arch, by permission only, but no one challenged it anymore. They knew better. One morning, Jack found a letter in his mailbox. It was handwritten, sealed in a simple white envelope. "Jack, I'm not asking for forgiveness. You probably wouldn't give it, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I wanted to say something. I was wrong. About the bridge. About you. About how power works. I used to think control was safety, that if I managed everything, nothing could fall apart. But I was managing out of fear. You didn't just win a legal case. You held up a mirror I couldn't look away from. I hope you're still out there, watching the trees and fixing bolts and staying just as stubborn as you were when I first met you. Karen." Jack read it twice. Then he folded it neatly and placed it in a small wooden box by the fireplace. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. It was strange, the absence of rage where once it had burned hot. He poured coffee, watched the fog rise from the gorge, and let the letter be. Summer brought more foot traffic across the bridge. Not the HOA residents. They still kept to themselves, but hikers, locals, even students from the forestry college nearby. Word had spread about the man who owned a bridge and beat the HOA. People wanted to shake his hand, hear the story, maybe just breathe in the air of hard-won solitude. He let them pass. Sometimes he joined them for a short walk. Sometimes he pointed out birds or trees his uncle had once named for him. Sometimes he didn't say a word at all.